Hello and welcome to our class, Children and Parents of the New Age. We are very happy to be here with you. I'm very happy that Sam is on my side. She is for some thousands miles away from me. She's in the middle of, or in the midst of America. I'm here in Austria, in my home country, because I was not allowed to go back to Spain because of the actual situation. Everyone know what it is. And today we would like to talk about a special topic about control. And our focus is on parents who are open-minded, also on spiritual approach or spiritual lifestyle. And I'd like to ask Sam to introduce herself.
Thank you.
You start.
So happy to be here with you. It's wonderful to collaborate on these projects. Like she mentioned, I am in the middle of the U.S. in Wisconsin. I live here with my husband and my two little girls. I'm a parenting coach, bringing more awareness to parents and education about themselves and their kids. It's kind of this dual way of doing things. It's not just about our kids, it's also about us and how can we create a good environment for ourselves and a good environment for our kids to raise them in a healthy way and to interact with ourselves in a healthy way. So that's kind of my mission, and my purpose is to bring awareness and education to parents.
Mm-hmm. And my mission is to support parents with spiritual tools, with spiritual information, as long as they are open-minded. But many of the new generation, like you, Sam, they are all the children of the New Age. Even you are an adult. So many young parents feel that parenting is more than they have been experienced in their own life. And many of them are very open for spiritual support by the angels, for example, or by ascended masters. And this is my part also of our lesson, because you are the children expert and I'm the angel expert. And therefore, I'd like to ask you to start with this topic.
Yes, let's do it. So, why we control, where it comes from, and how this shows up. So, the thing that can cause a lot of disruption in these parent-child relationships is our belief as parents that we have to control their behavior, right? And really, it's about guiding them through the clarity of our own example, as Abraham Hicks says. So, control is rooted in fear. We try to control things because we're scared of what might happen if we don't, right? And holding on too tight to an outcome, we can feel this pressure to have things be and look a certain way. And when we hold on to that expectation, we talked about this in our last class, when we have these expectations and we hold on too tightly, this can kind of cause a lot of disruptions when we're not open to kind of going with the flow here. I love what author and educator Alfie Kohn has to say about this. He says, control breeds the need for more control, which then is used to justify the use of control. The first step is to examine our own motivation. Are we ultimately trying to teach a skill, promote a value, boost self-esteem, or are we mostly interested in making someone do what we want? The first time I read that quote was like a slap in the face, like, oh my gosh, I never thought about it this way, but he's absolutely right. And when we feel control by our parents, we seek out ways to feel in control because our sense of autonomy wasn't fostered when we were young. We're kind of always fighting for that. And as parents, we can be really scared that if we don't control our kids, they're going to run wild. They're just going to be doing whatever they want, you know, making trouble. And we might be seen as a permissive parent, which, you know, letting kids kind of do whatever they want, whenever they want. And this is because we see it in this black and white kind of viewpoint, is either we are in control or we are being controlled. Not necessarily the middle ground here of what's healthy for me, what's healthy for my child. And this fear of being permissive can lead us to being overly controlling. So question for all of you parents watching, what areas of your life do you notice a need for control? And what about when it comes to your kids? What do you feel like you need to control in them? Now reflect back on your childhood. What areas of your life do you feel like were very controlled by your parents? And are these things similar or different than how you're interacting with your kids now? Because we know that when we feel controlled, it just makes us mad, and it can teach us to direct that anger towards other people. Now, some ways that control shows up in these parent-child relationships is behavior manipulation, rewards, discipline, perfectionism, because I said so, because I'm the parent, my house, my rules, guilt tripping, criticism and nagging, expecting absolute obedience without regard for their age development situation, the mentality of adults know better than kids, having unrealistic expectations, rules, and regulations for them, and also punishing behaviors. So active ones are physical force, yelling, intimidation, threats, restriction of physical movement. Passive ones are manipulation, guilt tripping, shaming, playing the victim, and also a lack of empathy and respect. So when the child is seen as subordinate to adults and not allowed to question or challenge authority, basic needs are met, but emotional ones can damage their self-worth here. And again, this I know best mentality, when we impose our will onto our kids, even when they are capable of making their own decisions. And I think the biggest thing to remember is that control can have this opposite effect. The most controlling parents might end up having the least control over their kids. And this comes from this place of force, right? It's not this influence coming with respect. They're totally two different energies at work here. And our kids pick up on those things way more than our words, right? The energy doesn't lie. They know, they can tell, they can see through us and what we're up to. So I will hand it over to you, Ingrid.
Okay. So I would like to go also in this topic, and I will come to my angel tools later. And I prepared a little slideshow. You also mentioned that control is always around us. We are controlled, but we are also controllers. So the subject of control is not only an important issue in education, but also in our everyday life as adults. We control our partner, we control our colleagues, we control our friends, we control ourselves. So control is something omnipresent, I would say, because we grew up with this, and it's normal for some state, because we learned it from our parents, and yeah, we don't think about it. So control means fear of risk, insecurity, or loss. So the more people are anxious about a loss, the more they try to control. They control, of course, people, but they also try to control situations. And there's the self-control instead of going with the flow of life. And people who are always self-controlling themselves, they don't really experience life because they will always sit in one corner of the room waiting for the next or big thing that will happen, and they don't go with the flow because they want to control everything, to lock the door and to shut down. And so maybe this comes from um, our ancestors or from our parents and grandparents, because they grew up with a lot of danger. For example, in Europe, they had the war, World War One, World War Two. So they tried to control everything, and to save or to keep children safe meant for them to control them. Yeah. And holding on instead of trusting life is the same. Because if you don't trust life, you always have to check, and to control. And sometimes it's not stepping out of mental boundaries. Because if we like to control with our brain, with our mind, then we never will experience something that is, for example, on another level. You know, you have the physical level, the mental level, the emotional level, and the spiritual or alternative energetical level. If you want to control your life on the mental level, you never will experience something on the emotional or in the spiritual level. And devotion to science versus holistic thinking is what I experience a lot when I work with my symbols, my essences, because they are spiritual tools. And of course, science doesn't understand spiritual tools. So for science, they do not exist. Also, angels do not exist for science. And science focused people also have a little bit, how do you say, a controlled realization of their life or what's going on. And therefore, control always is a kind of limitation. So I'd like to talk about a little bit about control dramas, because there's a word I like. This is called control drama, and we always create control dramas to get energy from other persons. We are not aware of this, but in many interactions, while we are controlling others, we gain their energy, which we don't do consciously, but on the unconscious level. So we call control dramas all the processes in relationships where we unconsciously draw energies from others to us or attach people to us by controlling, intimidating, keeping distance, or scrutinizing and questioning. And I have found some very nice pictures. Um, just a minute, a little bit later. We are all victims and perpetrators in one person, constantly causing control dramas. This is what I mentioned before. We are active and passive, always involved with controls or control dramas. And maybe you know the world bestseller, The Celestine Prophecy from James Redfield. Maybe not the younger generation like you, but it's a really, really good book. It's a spiritual book, or it's a book explaining what is spirituality in daily life. And it's a novel, it's written as a novel. And if you go into this experience, the book opens up. It's really, really increasing your consciousness, and you can learn a lot of it, although it's not a workbook. And James Redfield describes 4 control types in this world bestseller, in his world bestseller, because the control types are always also part of relationship, and relationship is also part of shifting our consciousness. So when we want to get more spiritual, to become more spiritual or open-minded for spirituality, we also have to think about our relationships and how we deal with relationship. So the control types are part of the spiritual awareness or awakening. So now I will show you the funny control types. Yeah, the interrogator. The interrogator always wants to control. This lady is controlling the cell phone from maybe the daughter or someone else. And the interrogator will always ask a question to manipulate other people. The second is the intimidator. Yeah, so little children will get scared or anxious about the intimidator. The aloof always keeps a distance, and maybe you never will realize the feelings or the thoughts of the aloof, and this makes you a little bit scared because you never know, is this a friend or an enemy? Sometimes teachers, you are not knowing if they are friends or enemies. And the poor me. The poor me is a person who is always poor and always tries to draw attention and also energy to him or her. So let's check the interrogator. The interrogator who gets to feel good by asking questions that are borderline aggressive, sometimes, not always. Certainly, they are aimed to making the other people feel small so that the interrogator can feel superior to them. Even adults are interrogators to children to feel bigger than or superior to their own children. Yeah? The most aggressive one is the intimidator who steals energy from other people by dominating them and making them feel inferior, either with physical or verbal aggression. So the intimidator gets to feel better and the other people feel worse. And this is, in many cases, one kind of how people educate their children. And this is, we really should think about this because we are not aware that people who are aggressive in verbalizing, that they are drawing attention, but also drawing energy from their children. The next is the aloof, which is a common response to an interrogator parent or an interrogator partner, of course. The aloof copes with other people by acting distant and hiding what they really think. I know a lady, when she is angry with her husband, she refuses to talk to him for 1 week, for 2 weeks. Yeah? And this is manipulation, and this is a kind of control. But this is the last we should do with our children, of course. And the poor me. These people take the victim position, saying their life is awful and it's all unfair, and they use guilt or pity to manipulate you. So sometimes parents are acting the poor me. They say, you cannot do this because mom is suffering. You cannot do this because mom is sad. You cannot do this because mom is this. Yeah. This is a kind of manipulation, and manipulation always is a kind of control. So if you want to become aware of this, of our control dramas, we have to check ourselves. We have to be honest, watching ourselves. Our behavior cannot change unless we have a look at ourselves, recognizing what we exactly do to manipulate other people's energy and therefore manipulate other people, of course. And here you see the generation, because it doesn't come from one generation. It's going back to our family, where we come from, and with these sorts of habit developed. So we are not aware of this, so we also can self-reflect how people around us, when we were children, manipulated or controlled us. Only when we identify the connections can we learn to understand and change or give up our control mechanism. So this is a typical person. I had such a person in school. We all were very scared about her. And let's remember that most of our grown-up family members or teachers have developed control mechanisms themselves to drain the energy from the children. Yeah, and if you see such a person, you know what's going on. And this is the reason why we started to develop control mechanisms in the first place. It was our only chance to get energy back. And unfortunately, we are doing the same with our children. So now you.
So, how we create control, how control creates compliance and defiance, and what that means with our kids. So, too much control can cause kids to become either overly compliant or defiant. It can kind of go each way. And usually we judge compliance as like being good, right? And being defiant as being bad, kind of that black and white thinking there. But they both have their implications. And most of us would love if our kids listened to everything we told them, right? Life would be so easy if you just did what I said. We wouldn't be fighting about this. But if that were the case, most of us would just be like little minions of our parents, right? We wouldn't be our own people thinking for ourselves and being individuals. We wouldn't be forming our own opinions, and we would just kind of be like little clones of them. Abraham Hicks says, it's not words that teach, it's life experiences that teach. So, being curious by nature, we want to find things out for ourselves. After all, that is part of the reason we're having this life experience, not to just be controlled by others and do what they say, but kind of find our own way through that. So, a study from the Journal of Child Development found that those who had authoritarian parents often scored high on measures of obedience and conformity to the standards of adults, and that they appear to pay the price where self-confidence is concerned in terms of self-reliance and perception of their social and academic abilities. So this pattern suggests that we have been overpowered into obedience, over-controlled into obedience. It's not our free will that we're choosing that. It's kind of like we don't have any other choice but to just do what this person says. And sometimes for kids, this is a coping mechanism, right? They don't have another choice. It's not safe. They have to do what this person says. Otherwise, it might not be a good situation for them. It's there to protect us because we have this real or perceived threat of what might happen if we don't obey our parents' command. And these kids, they might not put up a fight like other ones do, but it doesn't mean they're not feeling controlled, and it doesn't mean there's not effects from it. So there's this lack of personal freedom and autonomy, and our need for autonomy is chronically frustrated, and it can show up in aggravation, depression, physical illness, all sorts of other ways it will express itself when we are shut down like that. So the opposite side of this is this rebellion and defiance that control creates. Author Nancy Samelin says, when we win, we lose. When we make children obey by force, threats, or punishments, we make them feel helpless. They can't stand feeling helpless, so they provoke another confrontation to prove they still have some power. That's another really big eye-opener when you look at it that way. You're like, oh my gosh, that's totally what's going on underneath all of the behavior stuff. So these power struggles aren't just behavior issues either. They're relationship issues, often stemming from this lack of autonomy and respect without having some sense of this personal power. And if kids are afraid that their defiance behavior will result in punishment or some kind of consequence here, they're more likely to lie about what they've done. And neither of these extremes, the complete compliance or the defiance, are good for healthy emotional development of our kids. So I think that really kind of breaks the myth of that we want our kids to just listen and do what we say, and that kids who are defiant are bad. There's always more beneath the surface, what's going on that we don't see, especially in our parent-child relationships, and being willing to look at our kids' point of view and say, how might they be feeling right now in this situation?
So let's continue. This is a part of you have spoken. We prepared it without talking about it, so maybe something is twice here coming up, but it doesn't matter, because I think some aspects are very important to be heard, not only one times, but twice or more times. So my question also was why excessive control harms children. I have prepared a little bit slideshow. As you mentioned, Sam, for some parents, it seems quite appealing to control the children in order to manage everyday life with them more easily. Of course, it's not easy to have children, to have little children, to go to work, maybe to take care for parents or for a dog or for the garden or whatever. So women are sometimes really exhausted, especially women, what I can still watch here. It's more us women than men. I hope this will change one day. It's changing already, but yeah. And of course, it's challenging always to go with the child, to ask with the child, and to manage daily life with children. Therefore, some people, some parents use control to make life more easy for them. But a certain amount of control can be helpful for children, a certain amount, but compulsive control may have negative effects on the children. A little bit of control might be certainty, so that people or the children have the frame, or we know, okay, this is good behavior, this I can do, I can experience. It's a little bit of control, but if it becomes too much, it has a different or a negative effect. It's much more important to help children experience their values, their knowledge, their abilities, their creativity, to become independent and self-sufficient grown-ups. But you cannot reach this with control. You have to confirm children, you have to make them secure, but control is in many things the opposite of this. And it's also about the fear. Some parents abuse their influence on their children from fear of having to protect them from the dangers of this world. And in most cases, it's really the fear of the adults and not the fears of the children, because children, of course, they come into this life, they come with their karma and all the imprints from past lives. And of course, they can take fear with them. But most of the fear comes from the adults, and they are reflectors or mirrors of the anxiety of the adults. So this sort of fear originates in their own upbringing of adults. So they should think about, if they are anxious and use control because of fear, they should reflect and self-reflect about their own childhood. Because children need freedom to develop and discover themselves and their personalities. Of course, there are boundaries, but you shouldn't keep them too like this. The more you forbid certain things, the more likely they will do exactly the opposite of what you want. This is what Sam also explained. because we all know from ourselves that we didn't always do the same parents wanted from us, and sometimes we got so frustrated or angry that we did the opposite of what they wanted. And too much control can make children rebel, which is quite good in a certain thing. So rebellion is something natural. It is part of a child's development, but there's also destructive rebellion. And the more control, the more constructive might be or might grow rebellion within the child. It's important or more important to offer children orientation, letting them take part in discussions, in decisions, and to be on one eye level, even if parents have more experience in life. But they should integrate their children in discussions and also in decisions, because they have to learn to make choices for their life. If you control them always, you never will learn this. Too much control can make children's ability to find solutions disappear, or to look at problems from a different angle. So they never will learn what is plan B. If you always decide for them plan B or plan C, they never will learn and experience that life has different aspects, and if aspect one doesn't work, they have to think about or decide for aspect two. Too much control also means that children are deterred from overcoming problems to become the person they actually want to be. And therefore, it's important to give children the chance to find their own solutions, to develop and try out different solution strategies. And this includes failure. Of course, in school, we are trained to be without failure or to avoid mistakes, but this is part of our life. So we have to allow children to make mistakes. Excessive control makes nervous people out of children. They permanently have the feeling of doing things wrong or unsatisfactorily. And this is also with the grown-ups, with the adults. And they never learn to make independent decisions. So compulsive control is based on parents' fears and insecurities. Therefore, it desperately needs to be dealt with and solved. Now it's you again.
All right. So control and food. I like to start out with a little personal story for this one. We were out having dinner at our favorite Mexican restaurant. And this is a conversation I had with my 3-year-old. So we have this thing at dinner time where we go, raise your hand if your belly's full. And then some of us will raise our hand and say, I'm full. And others will say, I'm not full yet. So I say, raise your hand if your belly's full. And my 3-year-old goes, my belly's not full yet. And here's me eating more chips like you do at a Mexican restaurant, right? Can never stop. And she says, Mommy, I thought you said your belly was full. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I did say that. And I'm going to stop eating now. So what this showed me is that how we've been interacting in this way is showing up for her. She's recognizing and she's realizing that because we set the example for our children about what we eat, how much we eat, how we listen to our bodies. We hold the container for their food choices. And it's our job to teach them about what is healthy for them and what is not, and to model these good eating habits, because as a lot of us have learned, control in food can be a big issue for many of us. So starting when kids are young can make a huge impact when they're adults here, because how many of us were raised on this clean plate club, right? We had to finish everything on our plate. We couldn't leave the table until it was gone, even if we were full, not hungry. We didn't like the food. And we were told, kids in Africa are starving. You need to eat your food. And as an adult, you're like, that's so silly. But as a kid, it's like, we're using this control mechanism to get our kids to eat what we want to eat, how much we want them to eat, without really having regards for their bodies and what feels good and right to them. And we're actually teaching our kids to not listen to their bodies, to not listen to those signals. And we're telling them that what we say and what we think matters more than their feelings and their own, bodies. So, what I found really interesting is a study that two nutritionists did. They were observing kids from the ages of 2 to 4 and how their parents attempted to control their eating habits. So, what they discovered was that parents who insisted children eat only during meal times rather than when they were hungry, or who encouraged them to clean their plates even when they obviously weren't hungry, or who used food, especially desserts, as a reward, wound up with children who lost their ability to regulate their caloric intake. And some of these parents appeared to have their own issue of food. Control begets control, right? We're passing that down to them. And they were in the process of passing it down to their kids. The kids didn't have many opportunities to learn how to control their own food intake and started to stop trusting their own bodies. And one result they found from this is that kids were already starting to become overweight. Now, what do we do to avoid this situation? Here are my tips on this. Offer appropriate and healthy options to our kids, so no matter what they choose, it's a win, right? It won't be perfect all the time. That's okay. Just do your best. If you don't have certain things in the house, it's not an option, right? There's certain things that I don't buy because I know if we have them, that's all my kids are going to want to eat. Not that they can never have them. We don't want that part either, right? Where we rebel and we can never have it. So that's all we want. But having a better balance there. Don't force food onto kids. Don't ask them to finish or clean their plate. Encourage them to stop eating when their bellies are full. Be flexible about when they eat. Sometimes they're not going to eat breakfast. Sometimes they're going to want a snack when they're in bed, right? That happens to us too. There's mornings that I'm not hungry and I don't eat. And there's sometimes it's 11 o'clock and I'm like, I really need a bowl of cereal right now. So being more flexible with them and letting them kind of show you when they're hungry. Obviously, you can have your scheduled meal times, but it's not you have to finish this before you leave. Stop using food as a reward, right? You get the treat just because you get the treat. That's just part of it. It's not because you did something to get this treat, not because you did something I liked. Kids know how to regulate their bodies better than we do. It's their bodies. We are not them. We don't know what they're feeling inside. And sometimes they're going to eat very little. And other times they're not going to be able to get enough, right? We're like, how can you eat so much? But just trust that they know how much they need. So think back to your parents and what they modeled to you when it came to food and eating and control. How is that showing up in your life now? And what do you want to model to your kids going forward?
Good. I would like to add a short story because I have been working for many years as a kinesiologist. First, without my symbols. In the meantime, of course, I use my angel symbols also for spiritual body work. And I worked a lot on people, especially children. They had allergies against milk or wheat or cabbage or whatever. And I found out that most people or most children who refused a special thing, it's not good for their body. Because when I found out with the muscle test, I said, okay, there's an allergy there, and the parents said, oh, these are all the food my child doesn't want to eat. And then I said, yes, because the child listens to his body. Yeah, it's different than the adults. We all eat, blah, 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 yeah, but the children have more sense. They can communicate with their body. And so if a child refuses some food or special food, think about that the food really might not be good for this child at the moment or for a certain period of time. So it's very interesting about the sense of children and what they want to eat.
Oh, thank you.
So
That's
it's
it.
you again.
Another great way to look at it too, right? They really do know best. But so often we're more concerned about just controlling that than kind of giving them that trust. So let's talk about the impact on behavior and interest when there is too much control. Which kids do what they're told, and how does this impact their interest when there's too much control? So controlling environments have been shown to reduce people's interest. Children who have had controlling teachers display lower self-esteem and lessened intrinsic motivation. So that motivation that comes from inside of you, no one's making you do it. You just do it because you want to do it. They have less intrinsic motivation compared to kids whose teachers support their decision making. So in one experiment where parents were told to sit on the floor with their toddlers who were playing with their toys, some of the parents jumped in and started telling the kids how to play, right? They started controlling this environment for their kids, while others were content letting their kids explore and offering only to help when they needed it. Now, later, the kids were giving something else to play with without their parents present. And it turned out that once they were on their own, those whose parents were more controlling were likely to give up more easily instead of trying to figure out how this new toy worked. Now, research has also demonstrated a connection in other ways, such as grade school students who were given controlling instructions about how they were to handle paints in art class. Pretty simple, paints in art class, but the way it was given to them was very controlling. They ended up being less creative. So Dr. Mai Stafford says, control was significantly associated with lower life satisfaction and mental well-being. Psychological control can limit a child's independence and leave them less able to regulate their own behavior. Now, our behavior and amount of control or lack thereof of autonomy does have an impact on their interest and effort of something and their behavior. So a study that was done with 2-year-olds showed that they were more likely to comply with specific requests when their parents were, number one, very clear about what they wanted, but they also listened to their child's objectives and accommodated them in ways that conveyed respect for their autonomy and individuality. Research has also shown that children whose parents are sensitive, accepting, and cooperative and less controlling are more likely to do what they are told in comparison to parents who assume that they have the right to do what they wish with their children, imposing their will on them and shaping them to their standards, interrupting them without taking their needs, wishes, and activity in progress into consideration. So that just goes to show that power of influence that we can have, right? Depending on that energy and that space that we're coming from. The last thing I want to talk about here is a study that was done with preschoolers who were defined as unusually defiant. So, one group of their mothers were asked to play with them as they normally would, while the other group was trained to engage in any activity that the child might choose and allow the child to control the nature and rule the interaction. So the kid was in control. Parents were asked to refrain from commanding, criticizing, or praising. And after the session was over, the mothers were issued a series of commands to their children about putting away the toys. Now, the really cool thing is that the study showed that the children who had been subjected to less control and given more say about how to play were more likely to follow the instructions. So this just proves it's not the use of too much control that helps us to invite cooperation from our kids. It's actually kind of the opposite.
It's a lot of information we have to be aware, we have to think about, we have to self-reflect. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I have been working with angels together since more than 20 years. And in 1998, I got the message how to channel and produce or manufacture spiritual tools that comes directly from the angels, from the spiritual level. I have been channeling hundreds and hundreds of angel symbols, and these symbols are data carrier. I have some of them here. These are the angel symbols for children. And it's like a CD that contains music or a film or a video or a word data. So all the symbol cards are data carrier of angel energies. And especially the angel symbols for children are for supporting children and the inner child. And the symbols you can put on your body because the energy is getting into your subtle bodies, into your aura and chakras and blockages from this life and past lives. So this is a multidimensional spiritual tool that can help us to solve blockages and problems. For example, like we talked about giving up control. So this here you can see, this is the card, the booklet. And today I would like to show you how you as an adult can use the children's symbols to get out of your control drama. So first, you see here that 21 angel symbols, they all come with a name and an affirmation. And you can spread them here. Take the angel symbols for children and place them face down in the shape of a semicircle in front of you. This is how you will start. And then for the first symbol you will draw, you think of a situation from your childhood when your mother or your father or another adult had control over you. So before you draw the first symbol card, you think of a situation of your childhood that is connected with control. Then draw a symbol and place it in front of you with the symbol facing you. So the first symbol is for you and the situation of your childhood. Then you take the booklet. I have it here. It comes with the symbols. And read in the booklet under questions for parents what message the symbol contains for you and for your former situation, because the symbols tell you the story either about your child or about the inner child. So it's also always important to read the messages about, or the message the symbol wants to tell you. For example, if the booklet says, is your child insecure or scared? Now you have to change because it's for your inner child. And you have to change the question, have I been insecure or scared when I was a child? So you reflect on the first symbol you have drawn. It's about self-reflection and realization. Feel inside yourself what part of the symbol text you resonate with. Of course, you have to be honest. You can say, oh, this has nothing to do with me. Then the symbol never will tell you the story you have forgotten or suppressed. If you want to write it down, what you found out, all the thoughts and impulses that come into your mind, you can write it down, because if you work on yourself, you will feel and see the difference when you read it after a while. So this was the first angel symbol. Now think which angel energy would have been beneficial for you as a child when you were controlled, and draw another angel symbol. Read in the booklet again and reflect and write down all the knowledge that you have gained. So you have to realize what was missing in this time of your life, what you have missed, and then you also will realize what you are doing with your child, maybe, of course. So think, so I'm not sure if I jumped over. Yes, you have to read in the book and write it down if you want. And then the next symbol is, think of your control behavior towards your child and draw another symbol. This is the third symbol. And write it down again. Read in the booklet what the angel wants to tell you. Write down all the knowledge that you have gained. Finally, you draw another angel symbol, this time for your child, or allow your child to draw one symbol. Think of a situation when you control your child. Then read which angel energy is good for your child when it feels too controlled. This is, of course, a symbol, and the child could keep the symbol on the body or below the water glass or below the pillow. So you can integrate the symbols into daily life, because they have energy. They contain angel energy that is going into your energy system day and night. So read which angel energy is good for your child when it feels too controlled. Write down the thoughts that come to your mind. So you also have to be aware what's going on with your child. So in the meantime, you have drawn four angel symbols for children. Put them on the table, on a bookshelf, or in a drawer, and leave them for a few days or even weeks. You can connect with the angel. You can ask the angel for support. But even if you put down the symbols, maybe with a picture of you and your child, or with a picture when you were a child, and leave it for a while. It might seem like a little bit hocus pocus, but I promise you, I have been doing this for more than 20 years, and thousands of other people have been experienced the same. If you work with the angel symbols for children, all blockages will be transformed. And while the symbols are laying on the bookshelf or in the drawer, ask the angels for support, transforming and dissolving the burdening blockages. So you can additionally ask them for support. If you want additional angelic support, you can spray my angel aura essence, Angel Hariel. This is for children. Or Angel Norel for toddlers, above your head and the head of your child. You will feel hugged by the angels, because these symbols, these aura essences, I call liquid symbols. They contain the same energy as different angel symbols. So they are energized by channeled pure energy from the angelic world. And as soon as you take the symbols away, maybe for some days or weeks, don't forget to thank the angels. So if you work together, if you get the energy, if they support you, never forget to thank them, because it's nothing about consumption. Some people think they call the angel and the angel has to do or to keep all the problems away from them. It's a co-work between us adults and the angels. So we never should forget to thank them after we have worked with them for a while. Yes, Sam has the same symbols and essences. Yes, they are phenomenal, really. For me, it's always hard to talk about this because I'm not the person that says, "Oh, I'm so super, super, super," but it's not me. It's the angel energy. Yeah. And especially highly sensitive ones will feel the energy as soon as they take the bottle into their hand. It's nothing about aromatherapy. This is different. It's about angel energy. Also, if you take the symbol cards between your hand palms and you focus, and you can immediately feel how the angel energy is going up into your body and spreading in the system, in the body system, and also in the subtle bodies. But now it's up to you again for the last time today.
All right. We will finish with this, the difference between control and empowerment. So I think we really covered this throughout, but control is forceful. Empowerment is respectful. That is that biggest difference. And you can just, control carries its own kind of energy with the word, and empowerment has this totally other vibration to it. So some questions to ask when you're interacting with your kids and this need for control shows up for you. Number one, can I justify this with a reasonable explanation of why I'm having to control this? Number two, is what I'm asking them to do or not do necessary? And number three, am I more concerned with obedience than teaching them how to become responsible? Right? So this looks like working with our kids to solve their problems. Again, being flexible and having these reasonable rules that our kids actually help us make. They're much more likely to listen to what we say when they're involved in the process. They're much more likely to eat what we make for dinner when they're involved in choosing or helping to cook what we're making. So offer explanations and your reasons. Get rid of the because I said so. Get rid of the because I'm the parent. Trust and respect. They're huge, huge pillars of what this empowerment looks like. Assume your kids have good intentions, right? They are kids. They are learning. They are supposed to be immature. Get all the facts before you assume that, oh my gosh, they did this because of that. There's data that shows that kids are more likely to control themselves when parents negotiate and are open to changing their minds in response to an argument. Now, choice. This is one of the easiest things we can do to start to shift this dynamic, is letting kids make decisions about things that impact their life, right? Step in, obviously, when there's a legitimate reason for us not to let them make these decisions when it comes to, safety and well-being and things like that. But how can you give your kids more say? How can you give them more choice? This is kind of the secret tool to, even when kids don't have a say in something, even when there is no choice, as in, taking care of our bodies, brushing our teeth, we can still allow them to choose how they want to do it, where they want to do it, sometimes when they want to do it, right? My kids, sometimes they brush their teeth in the kitchen because that's just where they say they want to do it. It's a lot easier to get them to cooperate when, brushing our teeth isn't a choice, but hey, where do you want to do it? Last week we were brushing our teeth upside down, like they were laying off the couch, and I was like, hey, let's brush our teeth upside down. It was cool to them, something kind of novel, right? This is different, this is new. Brushing our teeth isn't a choice, but let's have fun doing it. Give them some options. Be the example for them. So babies and children, we naturally mimic our parents. We have these mirror neurons going on that is kind of reflecting back what the people around us are doing. So being aware of our behavior and what we're modeling to them, and thinking back, is this something that my parents did to me? Is this something that I want to continue doing? How might it feel to my child when I do this? So by practicing and supporting these principles, we help our children to actually become more aware of when other people are trying to assert themselves or control them, right? Because we also don't want our kids to just blindly listen to anything other people tell them. So this is a huge lesson that we're teaching them when we do this kind of work. And to finish up, it's our job, it's our responsibility to create safe environments while offering guidance and limits. And empowerment is key here to get our kids involved, give them a say, give them choices whenever we can. We're going to have less power struggles. We're going to have more cooperation, and everyone's going to be a lot happier in the end.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
And this is our aim, that everyone will become happy, the children, the adults, and yes, our life plan to become happy. And sometimes it's easier for us, and sometimes it's a little bit more challenging. So the next time we will continue our talk is on April 30th. Agreements with the soul of your child. It's very interesting because we all believe that we have a soul, and at least I believe that we also have past lives. And before we come into this life, we have agreements, and most of them we forget as soon as we are here. And I think this will be a very interesting class. I'm looking forward to you, Sam, on my side, and to our audience. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your interest, and yeah, until the next time.
Thank you all so much. Happy to have you here. We will see you guys back April 30th.